Dear colleagues and friends, it's a great pleasure to participate once again in one of our meetings of Friends of Free Iran. I would like to use my time with you today to touch on briefly on 4 points. First point is that you will have heard, and Dr. Baluchi was reminding us about this just now, you have heard with pleasure and joy that on the 1st June this year, the U.S. Court of Appeals ordered the Department of State to make a decision on the blacklisting of the PMOI. And the deadline they fixed was 4 months, and they said, the court said, that in 4 months there is no action, no decision from the Department of State, the court will remove the PMOI from the list. I want to emphasize this, because the court could have said to the Department of State, you must decide, and you have 4 months to decide, full stop. And that would have been, of course, quite significant. But the court says, you have 4 months to decide, and if you do not, we, the court, we remove the PMOI from the list. What is the court saying implicitly? The PMOI should not be in the list. So I think this is substantial. It's a qualitative change in the scenery, because we fought for 10, 12 years in Europe to remove the NCRI and the PMOI from the list, and we won the case in court. In the US, court cases work differently, as in Europe, because they have a different conception of the separation between executive branch and judiciary, so it's not exactly, we cannot establish a clear parallel between both. But precisely because of that, the fact that the court has ruled the Department of State must decide, and if not, the court will remove the PMOI from the list, I think is a major step forward. And that's why we all share your joy and your satisfaction, because it is really a decisive event. Indeed, it's a great victory for the Iranian resistance, and we congratulate the NCRI, especially, of course, those members, supporters, families in Camp Ashraf, in Camp Liberty, or many of them, unfortunately, in Iranian prisons, who have suffered the most from the fact of being in the blacklist. We applaud our friend, Mrs. Rajavi, President-elect of the NCRI, for her leadership in this campaign that has raised standards for justice in all the world. It's now time for the European Union and for the US to recognize the political coalition, the NCRI, as a key actor in the consolidation of a democratic alternative to the Iranian regime. As you all know, the NCRI was born in Tehran in 1981. You all know about their program, which is secular, which strongly advocates for equality between men and women, rights of minorities, rule of law, civil liberties. I believe that this NCRI is one of the most effective, if not the most effective, means we have of confronting the export of terrorism and the grave violations of human rights by the mullahs, and of course the worst threat they are now posing to the world, which is the nuclear program. The blacklisting of the PMOI in Europe, which took quite a number of years to remove, came about as a result of the previous US terror attack. Over the last 15 years, this unjustified listing has caused much harm in Iran, because this tag has been used by the totalitarian rulers of Iran to justify all kinds of atrocities, arrest, torture, and even executions. Also, it's operating very viciously in Ashraf and in Camp Liberty today. Maliki's government in Iraq is using the listing to stage 2 separate massacres in Camp Ashraf. Certain wrongs cannot be made right, and lost lives are lost forever. But we look forward to the US delisting the PMOI as a big step towards future progress. My second point is about the 2,000 Ashraf residents that so far have been transferred to Liberty. But only 350 of them have been interviewed by the UNHCR. Not a single person yet has been transferred to a third country. And we do not see this changing in short time. Meanwhile, conditions at Liberty, as also Dr. Baluchi was saying, conditions at Liberty grossly violate minimum humanitarian standards. Residents have no right of passage, access to lawyers, their families are not allowed to enter Iraq or visit the camp. The name of Liberty is really a paradox for this camp, because Camp Liberty is in fact a prison. One of the Iraqi government's excuses for violating these standards is that the United Nations envoy, Mr. Kubler, has called Liberty a TTL, a temporary transition location. Though, according to UNAMI and according to the US government, most of the residents will, under the most optimum conditions, stay at Liberty for at least 2 years. Frankly, you cannot call 2 years a temporary location. 2 years is a very long time. So Liberty must be legally recognized as a refugee camp. And Maliki's government must no longer violate UNHCR declared human rights such as health, peace of mind, and freedom of movement. And our friends in Liberty today are deprived of all this. My third point regards our frustration at the way the UN envoy, Martin Kubler, has been dealing with this issue. We don't like to personalize. Frankly, we prefer to speak in general, because when you point out to a person, always things become tricky. But we must do it, because otherwise we would be hiding a part of reality that we cannot hide. And we must say that we wrote to the UN Secretary General because we have been shocked by the recent trip of Mr. Kubler to Tehran. He appraised the role of the mullahs in the security of Iraq, which is frankly amazing. He also manifested his satisfaction on the reports he received from the Ministry of Iranian Ministry of Intelligence about the PMOI. So he was expressing satisfaction of the reports he got of the torturers in relation to the victims. I mean, this is something absolutely unacceptable. In the past 6 months, Mr. Kubler has fulfilled all his commitments to the government of Iraq, but none of those made to the residents of Ashraf. So he's not fair. He's not balanced. He does not protest. the continuous violations of the Memorandum of Understanding that he signed himself with the government of Iraq. Of course, without the knowledge or the approval of the residents. It is now clear that his mission seems to be to close Ashraf, to take away the residents' home and belongings, and to send them to Liberty, which in fact is a prison, and to do it at any price. This attitude is damaging for the Secretary General of the United Nations that has appointed him, and for the reputation of the United Nations. And we call once again, because we have done it many times, I suppose that Mr. Ban Ki-moon has a whole drawer full with our letters, we call once again the Secretary General to seriously investigate the issue of Ashraf and Liberty. And my fourth and final point is that we regret that the European Union has been on the sidelines on this issue. The case of resettlement has not progressed. And as I said earlier, not even one person has left Liberty for Europe. Of course, we go on with these efforts. But for the moment, no one has been transferred. At the same time, instead of taking responsibility towards the present inhuman situation in Liberty, Baroness Ashton continues to call Liberty a TTL, a transit location, and does not listen to our numerous letters and criticisms of the way that Mr. Kubler has been dealing with this case. Mrs. Ashton, Special Envoy and Advisor for Ashraf, Ambassador de Ruit, was repeatedly humiliated by the Iraqi government and not even given a visa to go to Baghdad. So, because if you are the High Representative of the European Union for foreign policy and security, and a government to which you are giving thousands of millions of euros does not even give a visa to your special advisor, and you do nothing, one day we will have the answer. Unfortunately, Ambassador de Ruit left office in January, and Mrs. Ashton has not replaced him. We expect, anyway, that our High Representative will call on the Iraqi government to stop these inhuman restrictions and blockades against residents in Liberty, and, frankly, instead of signing a huge economic deal with Iraq last month, she should have insisted on safeguarding the rights of the refugees, or at least make a deal. The very positive ruling of the American court should give Mrs. Ashton new momentum to put pressure on Iraq, and at the same time calling on European governments to accept a share of the refugees in Liberty. In any case, we will go on working to the best of our possibilities, and we will try, as we always do, to be up to the level of these challenges. Thank you very much.